Welcome to the HealthSpark, Igniting Healthcare Management Change and Evolution. I'm your host, Dr. Gingeraya. Hi, I'm Dr. Gingeraya, and today on the HealthSpark, Igniting Healthcare Management Change and Evolution, I have Simar Sharma with Trinity Life Sciences joining us. So thanks for joining us, Simar.
Thanks for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Great. So I'm going to read your bio and then we'll jump into it.
Sounds
So
good.
Smar is an engineer. She's an engineer turned consultant who thrives at the intersection of life sciences, healthcare, and strategy. She's currently an associate consultant at Trinity Life Sciences. She advises clients on commercial strategy, market access across therapeutic areas, including, but not limited to, oncology, central nervous system, and rare disease. She holds a Master of Science in Bioengineering from UC San Diego, where she developed nanosensors for the diagnoses of traumatic brain injury. Her academic foundation spans engineering, policy, regulatory affairs, giving her a uniquely holistic lens on how innovation progresses from lab to market. So welcome so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. I am very excited to share my experience and talk about everything in healthcare, technology, and life sciences. Very
Thanks so
excited.
much, Samar. We're so excited. And part of the reason that I was so anxious to have you on the podcast is because so many of the students that we have at our grad school are very, very interested in becoming consultants. So when we first met each other, I was like, oh my God, I'm dying to like hear your story, and I want to make sure that everybody hears how you got into this line of work. And I think it's really interesting. So the first question I have for you is for you to, tell us about your story. You have this really unique path from biotech, bioengineering, life science. How did you become a consultant?
I'm glad that we're starting with this question because I feel like it would be a great opportunity to share the thinking that went behind this interesting career trajectory, albeit a very early stage, but I'd still like to share a bit of that thinking if it helps anyone. I started out in biotech, and the thinking there was also a little out of the box, is how I like to think of it. And it's because I really liked chemistry in high school.
Mm.
I was really drawn to how chemical processes function, and I thought I would be in a more application oriented field, which is what drew me to biotech in the first place. And I think the first time I heard about biotech was in a TED talk. It was it was about genetically modified organisms, so like GMOs, and how it improves farming efficiency, how it advances humanity by leaps and bounds in agriculture and across different industries. And that drew me into it, and I really wanted to know the technology behind it. I did not know that it was chemistry led, so it was very exciting to learn how recombinant DNA technology works, and I learned that in all of my classes. And I think through my 4 years in biotech, I I was continuously fascinated. There was not even one moment where I felt like, oh, this is a little repetitive, this is a little boring, because everything was so exciting, everything was so new, and everything was so interesting at the same time. So I was continuously inspired and impressed by this field that I was in, but I wanted to branch out a little bit more. So that led to the pivot from biotech to bioengineering. So for those who don't know what exactly it is, they are overlapping concepts. In biotech, you basically use the principles of engineering to manipulate living systems to make products and solutions. So think of vaccines, for example. You're using a living system to create a version of something that helps you boost your immunity. So it works mostly with living systems. Bioengineering is when you take that a little bit higher and you zoom out a little bit. You take the concepts of engineering and science and you use that to solve biological problems in
Okay.
general. It doesn't have to be living systems. It can be living systems. It can be artificial organs, it can be developing organs on a chip, it can be developing different biomaterials, implants, surgical tools. So it was just expanding the scope of what biotechnology could offer, and I was more interested in learning the engineering that goes behind it. I have been an engineer and a scientist through and through my educational training. Now, once I started in bioengineering, on the side, I was also trying to explore other opportunities outside of the lab, because the lab was part of my academic coursework, but that was also the time, just flagging here, that was also the time when COVID happened.
Uh,
And there was a lot of buzz and a lot of noise about, what vaccines are important, where the field is advancing. So it was a very exciting time as a student of biotechnology and bioengineering to be in a world where the concepts of biotechnology and bioengineering were being used to solve a pandemic that we were all going through collectively together. So
mhm.
at that point, I remember my mindset was something along the lines of, I need to be at the forefront of this. I need to be the one who is leading this effort, and I want to be a part of that workforce. So I guess that's what made me question, how do I put myself at the forefront of this translation? Because I found myself working in the lab, I found myself designing experiments, I found myself finding really cool information that would ultimately translate to a publication, but I did not see a way out of it. So I would constantly find myself questioning, how does it really make its way to the market from the lab, like what happens next in the process.
Okay.
So the first way to do that was taking courses. So I took drug discovery, drug development, clinical translation courses, trying to understand how a drug really makes its way from the lab to a bigger lab, to another bigger lab, to a bioprocessing manufacturing facility, and finally to the patients. So that was the kernel for my transition to consulting, where
Okay.
I realized I wanted to be more on the business side of life sciences. And that's how I found my way into consulting. And now that I think back to that time, I feel like it was almost a natural next step. Like it had to happen as I was exploring this entire, I don't know, adventure, journey, however you might want to phrase it. So that's a little bit of the journey and the thinking that went behind the journey.
Okay. So you and I talked a little bit about the role of case competitions. Had you
Correct.
done any case competitions throughout your academic uh, career?
Interesting. Yes, interesting question. I actually hadn't done case competitions until I came to the US. So, to also preface, I did my undergrad in India and then I moved to the US for my grad program, which was
Okay.
in bioengineering.
Yeah.
And once I came to UCSD, UC San Diego, from where I did my MS in bioengineering, that's where I was exposed to the idea of case competitions. And to be honest, I wouldn't have known about life sciences consulting until I found friends who were raving about case competitions and how much it really helps you apply the concepts that you actually learn in class. And that sounded like a fascinating opportunity to me. And I was like, okay, this is where I get to solve real problems, and this is how I get to understand if I really enjoy serving people and solving those problems in real life situations. So I guess it was in 2022 when I first did a case competition at UC San Diego,
Uh-huh.
and that completely changed the way I think about consulting, the way I think about life sciences and technology and everything. It was a very eye-opening moment for me, I would like to say.
Awesome. So how many did you do? Did you win?
I won one of them. That was a case competition organized by UC San Diego, but there were a lot of inter-UC case competitions as well that I had the privilege of participating in. And we would also do a lot of pro bono consulting projects. So the runners-up of the case competitions would go on to do some of the pro bono consulting projects, and all of that was this is best experience I would think of, and I couldn't have asked for a better introduction to the professional realm. And I feel like the case competitions completely, fully, and holistically prepared me for it.
Awesome, awesome. So, okay, I'm going to deviate from the standard questions. Do you
Sure.
feel like the case competitions so it sounds like you feel like the case competitions prepared you. Um, do you feel like did those case competitions appear like in your resume? Did you talk about those when you started interviewing for your consulting
Yeah, that's
roles?
so fair. I did talk a lot. I actually spoke only about my case interviews.
Ah,
I feel like what case interviews do to you is they give you more practice into thinking through a structural framework. It helps you think very structurally on what is the problem that you're trying to solve, what you need to do to solve the problem, and what the steps it takes. So it puts you into a very structural pattern of thinking that helps in your problem solving ability. And the more you do it, the more practice you get at it, the better you get. So I feel like this reflected not just in my resume or as my experience, but also in the way I would approach interviews and solve case interviews. So the whole case competition in consulting interviews, you also have a case competition, the case interview side of it, and that was where the case competitions came in, and I was able to articulate my thoughts on how I'm looking at a problem, how I'm deciding to approach it, and how I'm planning to ultimately solve it. So
awesome.
that's where it would show up.
Okay. So is that how you got into consulting by
Absolutely.
applying? Okay. Wonderful.
Absolutely. Um, a little bit of an interesting nugget there is in my university. So UC San Diego was a very research focused university, and when I joined the program, my intentions were to be in R&D. To be in one side of it, because I was like, I'm going to the premier research institution in the US and I'm gonna come out as a scientist and I'm gonna do big things, right?
Ah,
But it was after I joined when, I found out about case competitions. I found out about how translation actually happens. And I was like, you know what, let's give this a shot and let's see how it goes. And it was a pretty miraculous leap of faith, but I started interviewing with consulting companies and it just clicked. And I can attribute a lot of that to my case competition experience. And that helped me so much in landing the role that I have right now and the job that I do right now. It's truly, truly miraculous and very enjoyable.
wow. Okay, great, great, great. So
Yeah,
super, super interesting to hear
absolutely.
that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go on to the second question about your work today
Hmm.
at Trinity Life Sciences.
Yeah.
So you've done this work in autoimmune, in again, CNS, oncology, gene editing. When
Hmm.
you're evaluating these projects, these products, how do you know that things are actually going to succeed in the real world? And I mean, I don't know how much you can talk about, but like, how do you evaluate things as a consultant?
Yeah.
Talk us through that.
Hmm. So, to preface everything, I would like to say the basic foundational principle remains the same, which is you think about a problem very logically and in a structured manner, and then you see how you can solve it, what you bring to the table. A lot of consulting is very qualitative, so it's trying to understand the value a product is bringing to the table. And in my experience, across my experience, I can speak about the commercial strategy aspect of it and also the market access side of things, right? So when I am working, for example, on an early stage asset and I am trying to find how physicians are thinking about adopting that product in their workflows, how payers are planning to probably fund this product, I am constantly looking at the final outcome. Like it's a very big picture thinking that I start with, which I think is the best way to approach it. And that's what helps me, is that is this product actually serving the patient it intends to serve? So, one of the questions through my educational training and my professional endeavors that I want to answer continuously is what is coming in the way of technology reaching patients. So, whenever it is that I am evaluating personally a product, I always tend to look at, is this product really helping the patients? Or is it just a me too? It's a better version of something that already exists. Now, the interesting thing is both are necessary. They are incremental innovations that are important for something big to eventually happen. And they're happening in parallel with breakthrough discoveries. All of that's happening at the same time. So there's not really much to complain or say that, okay, this is a bad asset or this is a good asset. But it ultimately boils down to how incremental the benefit is. So, for example, if you have a patient today in oncology who is having to go into the hospital thrice a week to get an IV infusion of a drug, it's a lot of burden on the patient. It's a lot of burden on the system because you need infusion chairs in the hospitals. You need that resource available for the patient to avail that therapy. If today a new therapy comes out, which is a subcutaneous injection, which you can either administer at a physician's office or you can administer yourself at home, it brings down the total cost of care, but it also helps the patient because the patient doesn't have to travel thrice every week to the doctor's clinic to get it or the hospital to get it. So it's incremental benefit through the innovation that you're trying to bring to market. That's what stimulates me as I am working on different products.
Okay, great, great, great.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so you said a lot of interesting things. So a lot of questions. So who are you technically working with? And that leads me to my third question. We're talking
Mm-hmm.
about your KOLs. I mean, are you mostly working with physicians? Are you mostly working with researchers? Like, who are you mostly working with, Samar?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So I will help you understand how the model really works. Our clients are pharma companies. They are companies that are manufacturing the drugs, right?
Okay.
And we work for them as a third party organization where we are interacting with physicians and payers on behalf of the company
Um,
in order to make sure that everything is fair, everything is blinded, and a drug is evaluated for what it is.
okay.
And it excludes any and all bias that exists, right? So I come in and I do a lot of market research with physicians. I do market research with payers. I try to understand if physicians are going to use this drug in their practice. If yes, how much of it will be utilized in what patient population. With payers, I am testing how much are they willing to fund this drug. And there are multiple layers that come into it. There's a lot of nuance, there's a lot of complexity because some drugs have very adversarial safety warnings, right? So payers need to fund it in a way that physicians need to cycle through at least 3 drugs to get access to this breakthrough innovation because it also has a high chance of harming the patient.
Mhm.
So a lot of regulations need to be in place for that to happen. So I am essentially a middle party conducting that market research and actually giving a recommendation, presenting a recommendation to my client saying that, hey, there is a lot of enthusiasm about this drug among physicians and among payers. You should definitely commercialize it. So I am trying to sort of be the voice of reason, stand in the middle, and give an unbiased point of view on what's going to work in the future and where interest is in the community.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So back to question 3. You've
Sure.
spoken with over 100 of these stakeholders, and
Right.
which includes these, physicians, these payers. So, what's one insight that you've learned from these conversations that most people that are outside of this industry
Yeah.
misunderstand about adoption and access? That, I think when we hear Trinity Life Science, most of us are like, what is
Yeah.
that? So, what do people not understand about this?
I feel like there's a lot of misconception in the market about physicians, about payers gatekeeping adoption,
Mm,
that a physician would want to keep a patient on treatment if
um,
it profits them.
I see.
I I think that's a huge misconception because I
Um,
don't think physicians or peers are in the way of innovation. They're
okay.
just in the way of uncertainty.
Uh,
That's the way I like to see it because if you're able to have a credible value story of your product, that this is my product, this is the population it intends to serve, this is the outcome of this drug in this population, this is the beneficial treatment effect that my drug is able to show, then of course there's nobody stopping anybody from funding the drug. It's almost always that we do not have a credible evidence source.
Mhm.
We do not have a patient population. It's a broad label. It targets everyone, but not everyone is going to react to the drug in the same
Right.
manner as it is claiming to do. So
Right.
that's the reason there's so much scrutiny from physicians. They're constantly harping on, okay, who do I really use this in?
Mhm.
Where can I see incremental benefit? Show me the data. So
Right.
that's a common question that physicians come to us to ask, and they're like, okay, this is a great profile that you're showing. Who is it helping?
Mm.
So that's what I see among physicians. Among payers, I guess the main question that they are trying to understand is by how much are they reducing the total cost of care? So,
Mm.
for example, if today the total cost of care in oncology is $1 billion+, where every treatment costs $1 billion, and you are bringing a new treatment to market that costs $1 million a dose, is that a fair price for that drug? How many patients are going to use it?
Right.
So, a lot of these practical conversations need to happen often in the early stages of developing a drug
Right.
versus after approval as an
Right.
afterthought.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of misconception comes in from people who are not part of this process because a lot of it is very confidential.
Right.
But I want to assure everyone and say that a lot of those conversations happen on a daily basis because everyone working in the healthcare space wants more and more patients to have access to these drugs.
Okay. Awesome. Excellent. All
Yeah.
right. So now on to the challenges and the threats. So in your experience, what do you feel is the biggest bottleneck? What's your biggest concern about, a threat to healthcare, to life science, to regulation? Like what in that whole scheme of things, what are you most concerned about right now?
I'm an optimist by nature, so I wouldn't want to phrase it as a concern that I have, but I will also be remiss if I don't mention the impact of AI today in healthcare and how
Mm,
it's planning to revolutionize this
absolutely.
space. And I feel like the over reliance on systems from yesterday that were designed to solve problems that existed 5 years back or 10 years back is something that could be termed as a bottleneck. Because I am in this industry, I realize that there is change that's happening at every step of the way. I just think it's ultimately the rate of change and the pace that will count towards how healthcare as an industry integrates AI into its workflows to
Mhm.
reach a wider audience than it does today. So,
Okay.
in terms of threat, I would say that the threat is being too comfortable in the systems of today when you're actually trying to solve a problem of tomorrow. So it'll be this is feedback for myself and everyone in the healthcare industry to be more open towards adopting new systems, new ways of thinking, more AI workflows to make sure that we are progressing with the times to solve problems of the future.
Great. Great. Okay.
Yeah,
All right. So I'm going to change my last question because, of
sure.
course, you said something that triggered me. In listening to the way you kind of came and grew into your career as a consultant,
Right.
I started thinking about especially some of the emerging leaders that I know that are, trying to find their space and it kind of made me think about your journey. And when I
Yeah.
think about, what advice would you give to emerging leaders, or maybe what advice you would have given to yourself?
Yeah.
I think about we're talking about some of your training early on. A lot of times when I talk to people that are emerging leaders, they're trying to figure out like, should I get this certificate? Should I get this, should I get this extra degree? Should I get this like what else should I get? And I
Yeah.
think for you, now that you're a very seasoned consultant, what would you advise people, especially if they do want to be consultants? Like,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that there's a certain certificate that they should get, or that you should have gotten, or that you should have gotten earlier, or do you need a PhD? Like, talk us through like what is frivolous, what is not necessary, what is because I know people that they're like, oh, I'm gonna go get a whatever certificate, or I'm going to get this, and then you don't need it, like, so talk us through some of that.
That's such a fair question. And I feel like any answer I give to this would be taken with a grain of salt and should be taken with a grain of salt
Yeah,
because it's different for everyone. A
absolutely.
PhD,
Is always
I
helpful, but
yeah, exactly. It's noble.
yeah.
I did not believe that it would add any incremental value to my career because I was very set on entering the professional world as early as possible to get that hands-on direct experience. However, I feel that any and all executive coaching is important for
Okay.
you just to learn the ropes of a
Excellent.
commercial setting.
Okay.
And I feel like it to each their own. I feel like for some, having an executive leadership program and an experience from it would be helpful.
I
For
agree.
some, a PhD would be helpful.
Yeah.
It's all that induces a spark. So my biggest advice to myself or to anyone in my shoes now would be to lead with an open mind.
Okay.
Explore everything and see what clicks for you because my journey wouldn't have been the same if I followed someone else's footsteps. And
Right.
I feel like that's what happens, and at least in my generation I saw that happening a lot around me where everyone was like, okay, this person did this and landed here, so this would be great for me. And it's always good to have a role model or someone you look up to, but always know that your journey is going to be unique and it's going to be based on your likes and your interests
Yeah.
and what you're good at. So it
Right.
ultimately is on you to figure out, does this really work for me? Read through everything and see what clicks for you because that's your best shot at having a unique trajectory.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Is there a requirement? Like, is there any hard and fast requirements to be a consultant?
Super fair. It's actually a question that we get a lot from our clients that, okay, you are a 22-year-old grad. How equipped
How
are
do
you
they
to
know that?
consult? I
Okay.
mean, yeah, right. So it's a common question that a lot of people who are intrigued about consulting or consulting naysayers would say, and I feel like it's never the right time to enter consulting, and it's never a wrong time to enter consulting. It's it's basically you can enter it anytime you want. You just need to have the curiosity angle of it because anyone can be a consultant. You just have to know what you're consulting on because a lot of times there are a lot of questions on what is it that consultants really do, right? And that's a big black box of questions and it opens another conversation entirely. But as someone in consulting, I don't think there's a requirement or any advanced degree that you need for consulting. You just need to exhibit a structured problem solving mindset, appetite for solving problems, and not being stressed out by problems
Yeah.
because you get to do them on a daily basis, and that's the most exciting part of being a consultant. And
Wonderful.
that's when you know you truly enjoy consulting.
Great. That's super helpful because
Yeah.
I've also heard people say like, "Oh, I'm certified in XYZ," and I'm like, "What the heck's that?" I've never heard anybody say that. But, and to hear you say you're not per se certified in. Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mar. You just
Yeah.
validated my thoughts.
Of course, I'm happy
Wonderful.
to. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, that was super, super insightful. We're going to share your bio, any social media links you'd like your
Yep.
LinkedIn maybe.
LinkedIn. Yeah, I am happy to share that along.
Okay, excellent. That way people
Yep.
can follow you. Um, Samar may or may not be judging some competition in the future with her expertise. But thank you so much, Samar, for joining us today. That was very insightful. I really appreciate you talking us through, what your day-to-day looks like. It sounds like no day is the same, and it's super exciting. That sounds super exciting.
Bang
Uh,
on.
yeah, wonderful. So thank you so much for joining us.
Of course, very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to the HealthSpark, Igniting Healthcare Management Change and Evolution. Please look out for future episodes and follow us on our social media pages.